Day one of Big Ten Media Days is well underway. It started early this morning with Commissioner of the Big Ten, Tony Petitti, taking the podium. And then you have Illinois, Northwestern, Ohio State, Purdue, Rutgers, and Wisconsin today at Big Ten Media Days. How many of the 6 teams do you think make a bowl game this year that are in day one of the Big Ten Media Days? Because you look at it and you got to squint for 4. I think you're looking at about half. And we were just talking to our fine controller, Chuck, who just came in. He's like, how do they break up these teams? It's like, well, I think the goal is to bring in a couple of big brands every single day and to try and carry so you don't have a day where it's Northwestern, Indiana,
Minnesota,
Illinois, Minnesota, all just kind of scrunched together. Like you look at today, obviously the heavy hitters today are Ohio State and Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. They have 2 heavy hitters, and then they have 4 other programs that
thanks for coming
are building or in the dregs of the Big Ten Conference when you look at returning talent and when you look at kind of the optimism surrounding the programs. I think today's crew with Ohio State and Wisconsin, 2 really damn good programs, and you have obviously national championship aspirations for Ohio State, which is far and away the most talented team in the Big Ten. And I do think Oregon is the second most talented team in the Big Ten heading into this year. Ohio State is loaded to the gills across the board. And you are looking at not just great college football players, they got NFL talent littered all over. And you can look at Oregon, you could say there's a lot of position groups where the top end talent is better at Oregon than at Ohio State. The depth that Ohio State has built over the last handful of years, whether it is through the traditional high school recruiting or the transfer portal, they have depth on top of depth. And Oregon, for the first time that I can remember, has got depth at every single position where you can sit there and you can say they can withstand an injury at every level of both offense and defense. And you go, I think they're going to be okay. They would be okay. And you can navigate through it. But Ohio State is that is a national championship caliber team. I think Oregon is a national championship caliber team when you look at the all of the modeling and the metrics that say what builds national championship contenders. It is recruiting and stacking talent the way that those 2 programs have. Michigan is, by the way, they're not far behind because of the way that Harbaugh was able to recruit for several years back to back to back to back classes.
Looking through some way too early mocks, just in first round talent alone, the Big Ten currently has roughly 12 players projected to go in the first round.
Yeah, 12, and then you probably have like 13 from the SEC. So you're looking at 25 of the 32 top first round picks.
We find the only non-SEC Big 12 or Big 10 players: Travis Hunter, Shedeur Sanders, Tedorola McMillan, Ben Morrison from Notre Dame, Ollie Gordon.
Oklahoma State.
And Patrick Payton from Florida State. Otherwise, everyone else is
SEC Big Ten.
Yeah.
SEC Big Ten, and that's the way it's going to run through. And look, with that comes expectations and how you can control those expectations. Ryan Day, he took the podium today and was talking about that very thing with his Ohio State team.
You know, our focus is on this preseason. It's the next step. And, I'm sure a lot of coaches will say it. You can't really, focus on what happened the year before. You can't get too worried about what's coming down the road. But we all know there's a lot of, noise and a lot of hype around this team. And what we can't do is, let those distractions, grab our focus from what we need to do day in and day out. We know it's going to be a long season, but we got to have a great preseason. We got to have a physical preseason. We got to lay that foundation for what's going to come as we head throughout the season. But we're very, very excited about our guys. We have great experience in that locker room and some great talent. But it's going to take more than talent. It's going to take all the no talent issues to get to where we want to be and reach our goals.
Boy, that is the most coach speak thing that you could possibly say from Ryan Day.
Which is kind of funny because basically what he's saying is I need to not suck at my job, because that's the thing, is that Ohio State does have all the talent in the world.
Yeah.
And if they don't get it done, it is on him.
It is.
Like, look, and this is why we talked about this last year, where I said I don't believe in Ryan Day at that level. I don't, and I think that's the pressure that is on Ryan Day right now. Is that I don't think most people believe in him at that level right now.
I think what he has done with his staff, though, and kind of checking his own ego, taking away play calling duties from himself, handing the offense over to Chip Kelly, hiring Carlos Lachlan from Oregon as your running backs coach, going out and they have secured Jim Knowles as their defensive coordinator. He's doing a very good job with that unit. Their big concern is, and this is where if they lack depth anywhere, it's on the offensive line. Where I think that's a position group that you can say Oregon has got an advantage with the depth that they have on the offensive line. From Mario Cristobal to what you now have with Alik Terry and Dan Lanning building on the offensive line, they do have depth on the offensive line. But I think that what Day is saying in his coach speak there is basically how we all feel, though, is you can have the most talented team in the world, but the expectations that come along with being that, Alabama was the most talented team in college football for several years. They didn't win the national championship every year.
No, but they were there.
The most impressive thing about Nick Saban was he always got them to that place where they had a seat at the table, whether it was going down to the wire in the Iron Bowl, in the SEC championship game, or in the 4-team college football playoff. They were always there. And I think that may be to what you're talking about is where some folks have a question mark with Ryan Day. Is he the guy that can get them over that hump?
Because the talent is there.
Bringing in guys like Chip Kelly, that is a very good start to making sure
which is what Nick
get
Saban
over that
did.
hump. Yeah,
Nick Saban brought
absolutely.
in, Lane Kiffin, brought in Steve Sarkisian. Like, you bring the list of guys that he brought in. Everyone's like, oh, it's the Nick Saban rehab tour. Yeah, it's also the get Nick Saban's offense kicking butt tour. That's what it was.
Brain trust of coaches. And it's a really hard thing for head coaches, especially when you come up as a play caller like Ryan Day did,
to give that up.
and even Nick Saban did, to then transition to, all right, I'm going to delegate some of my power and responsibilities to people that I trust, and finding those guys that you trust is a really hard thing. That's why going out and getting a Chip Kelly, who had, for all of the faults that Chip has as a recruiter, that dude can maximize talent out of his quarterbacks and from everybody else. He finds a way to mask your shortcomings offensively, because the talent that Oregon had on offense, the running backs were absolutely amazing, but the development of offensive line, the wide receiver play was never game breakers on the outside. No. The quarterback play until you got Marcus Mariota,
which again was not a 5-star guy, he's a 3-star kid out of Hawaii.
It was not eye-popping with Jeremiah Masoli or Darren Thomas under Chip Kelly. He maximized and masked their weaknesses by having a stable of running backs that was absolutely incredible. Running an offense that was innovative and different than what anybody else was doing at the time, and times have caught up, and the offense isn't nearly as explosive, but his ability as a play caller to adapt and adjust, UCLA was not nearly as talented as their record indicated, and they weren't very good either.
No.
Win-loss-wise. I think that Chip, that's a monster hire.
Yes.
And that goes a long way with the coach speak verbal diarrhea that Ryan Day was preaching there, in that you need to block everything else out in order to maximize what they have from a talent standpoint. Ryan Day's on the hot seat, though, this year.
Oh, if they either lose to Michigan, I think they can actually lose to Oregon, and it won't be the death of him. But if they lose to Michigan, I think he's done.
Yeah. Well, if you lose to Oregon and Michigan in the same year, I don't think he's done if they lose to. Depends on what Michigan looks like this year.
I don't think so. I think if they lose to Michigan again 3 straight years, I think he's done.
Yeah. I think it is what they do in the playoff. When they
would have to win a title, I think, in order to offset a loss to Michigan again.
Like if they lose to Michigan and then lose in the championship game, I could see that.
I could see him being gone.
With the level of talent, the expectations that have been heaped upon them, and the expectations that he is not running from either, because he knows how talented the roster is. You can't ignore
everyone in the
how
country
good
is
they are.
saying that they have the most talent in the country.
Yeah. I mean, and like this Vancouver Ford text line, bold move to bring Chip Kelly in as your O coordinator. Chip has the potential to become a fan favorite coach. Yeah, he may hire his replacement.
Yeah.
As offensive coordinator.
Would Chip would want to run that machine.
I think Chip would, but I don't know. The fact that Chip Kelly left being a head coach because he wanted to go in and coach a position again and not have those responsibilities. Yeah. The head coaching world has changed so much, and there are coaches, we've talked about this at length, where you sit there and you go from being hands-on coaches, the responsibilities now, you cannot be as hands-on as you would like to. You have to be a different mindset of a head coach. Like, it's completely different in that you are essentially, we were talking about this yesterday with general managers in college football programs now. You are essentially the president of a franchise. And
a corporation.
Yeah. Like an NFL team, you are the president of football operations. You have a general manager, and you are navigating everything from NIL to the guys on your roster right now to every minute detail that goes into getting you to game day, and really not. And then
not
on
about
game day, it is game management. Yeah. Like in that's where you're at. It's a weird landscape, and guys are just some coaches are saying, not for me anymore.
It's not
to be
the
a
old
head coach.
ball coach anymore.
They're the old heads that are adapting to it and are figuring it out. I give them a ton of credit. And we have audio from Brett Bielema, who's talking about their roster at Illinois. But Bielema said something in his availability that I thought was interesting. He's like, dude, I was on a plane. I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, because some kid, an offensive lineman, entered the portal. I'd never been to Albuquerque, New Mexico in my entire life. I was there. I recruited him. And then I was on a plane the next day heading over to the East Coast because there was another kid who was in the portal, and I needed to go and visit him as well. And there's a lot of coaches who are like, that's not for me. Yeah. Bielema is a guy who's transitioning into the modern college football head coach, and it's a different world, man. Like it's completely different. The interesting thing is that what head coaches do now, I think the days of Saban being like the defensive backs coach and head coach, those are gone. Like you go around, and if you were to go to an Oregon practice, for example, Dan Lanning has got a microphone in his back pocket, and he's just scanning across the field. Yeah. And if he sees something, he goes on the mic and says, whoa, 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 boom. And then he pops over there. Then he's bopping over to the defensive side, back over to the offensive side, over to the defense. Like it is all over the place. Like these guys are wired so differently now. It's crazy. And to the point that you said at the very beginning of this, is Ryan Day that guy? That is going to be the massive question heading into this year.